Welcome back to Financial Books to Read. We are doing a deep dive today into I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. It's a modern classic when it comes to personal finance, I think for good reason.
Yeah, I think what's refreshing about Sethi's approach is that he acknowledges the psychological barriers
Hmm.
that often hold us back when it comes to money. So he doesn't just throw a bunch of financial jargon at you. He helps you understand your own money mindset
Yeah,
and then develop healthy habits.
totally. And it's like he gets it. It's not just about spreadsheets and interest rates.
Yeah.
You know, it's really about understanding why we make the financial decisions that we do. I think for me, reading this book was like a light bulb moment. I realized I was so stuck in this cycle of information overload, constantly reading articles, comparing different investment options, but never actually taking action.
The classic paralysis by analysis trap. Sethi calls this out brilliantly. He actually references Barry Schwartz's book, The Paradox of Choice.
And now, let us explore the first advice of the book.
Yeah.
Optimize your credit cards. Okay,
Mhm.
speaking of credit cards,
Okay.
Sethi presents this interesting idea that they're both a gift from heaven
Mm-hmm.
and a convenient enemy. I
Yeah.
can relate to that.
Right.
They're so convenient for everyday purchases.
Yeah.
But if you're not careful, those interest charges
Yeah.
can really add up.
He uses a great example to illustrate this point.
Yeah.
Financing an iPod.
Okay.
If you only make the minimum payments on a $250 iPod,
Mm-hmm.
you could end up paying close to $300 because of the interest.
Oh my God.
That's like throwing away an extra $50.
Ouch, that really puts things into perspective.
Right.
It's easy to get caught up in the convenience of credit cards
Yeah.
and lose sight of the real cost.
That's why Sethi dedicates a whole chapter
A whole chapter.
to mastering your credit cards.
Okay.
He lays out 6 commandments
Six
that
commandments.
can help you take control of your credit and
Yeah.
beat the companies at their own game.
Okay, let's dive into those commandments.
Right.
The first one is pay off regularly or face dire consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Some people say one missed payment isn't a big deal.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Well, payment history is the single most important factor
Okay.
in your credit score.
Okay.
It accounts for a whopping 35%.
Wow. 35%.
So even one missed payment
Yeah.
can have a significant impact,
Okay.
especially if it's recent.
So it's not worth risking it.
No.
Sethi suggests setting up automatic payments
Yes.
to eliminate the risk of late fees
Yeah.
and missed payments altogether.
It's a simple but effective strategy.
It is.
And he even shares an anecdote
Totally.
about a guy who successfully got late fees and interest charges reversed
Wow.
just by making a phone call to his credit card company.
It's empowering to know that you can push back against these companies
Absolutely.
and advocate for yourself.
Yes.
Which leads us to the second commandment. Waive those fees.
Okay.
He provides a script
Does he really?
for calling your credit card company
Wow.
and challenging those fees.
Right. It's like a role-playing exercise.
Oh,
We're taking control of your finances.
I like it.
And it ties into the third commandment. Negotiate a lower APR.
Some people might be intimidated by the idea of negotiating
Yeah.
with their credit
Yeah.
card company.
Right.
Any tips for making that process less daunting?
Sethi recommends being polite,
Okay.
but persistent.
Polite to persistent.
He provides specific reasons
Yeah.
and alternative offers to use in your negotiation,
Okay.
such as mentioning lower APRs from competing cards.
Oh, interesting.
And he emphasizes that even if you pay your balance in full every month,
Right.
a lower APR can still save you money down the line
Okay.
if your circumstances change.
So it's all about being proactive.
Yes.
And taking advantage of every opportunity to save money.
Absolutely.
Smart Commandment 4 is card longevity, credit history gold.
Oh,
He suggests keeping your oldest credit cards open,
right.
even if you don't use them often.
Yeah.
Some might say closing old cards can improve your credit.
Right.
How would you address that?
Well, closing an account can actually backfire. It lowers your total available credit,
Okay.
which can negatively impact your credit utilization rate.
Your credit weight.
Utilization rate.
Okay.
This is the percentage of available credit you are using.
Oh, I see.
So a longer credit history with a good track record is more beneficial
Okay, so longer is better.
in the long run.
Okay.
But how do you keep those older cards active
Yeah.
without overspending?
That's a good question.
Sethi's tip is to set up automatic payments for small recurring charges
Well-
on those less used cards, like a streaming subscription
Uh-huh.
or a monthly donation.
That's smart.
This keeps the cards active without adding unnecessary spending to your budget.
Brilliant. Now, Commandment 5 is a little tricky.
Okay.
More credit can be good. Sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm sure our listeners wondering when that sometimes applies.
Sethi is very clear.
Is
Yeah,
she?
this advice is only for people who
Okay.
have no credit card debt.
Okay, so no credit card debt.
It's about strategically increasing your credit limit.
Okay. To lower your credit utilization rate,
Okay.
which can positively impact your score.
So you want enough available credit
Yes.
to keep your utilization low,
Right.
but not so much that it tempts you to overspend.
Exactly. It's about being mindful
Maybe.
and responsible with your credit.
Okay. And finally, Commandment 6. Those rewards are yours. Use them.
Yes, this one's all about...
Maximizing the perks that come with good credit.
Right. Sethi encourages readers to take advantage of credit card benefits,
It's like what?
like warranty doubling travel insurance
Mm-hmm.
and even concierge services.
Wow. I didn't know about the concierge services.
He points out that good credit
Yeah.
often unlocks better treatment from companies in general.
Oh, really? It's like a secret club
Right.
where responsible people get special perks?
He even shares a story about a guy
Huh.
who got a full refund on a broken camera
What?
because his credit card extended the manufacturer's warranty.
That's amazing.
It just goes to show that it pays to understand the benefit.
Your credit cards offer
Yeah.
and utilize them to your advantage.
Absolutely. I love that.
Good.
Okay, so we've mastered our credit cards.
Right.
But now what about all the debt we've racked up using them?
Yeah.
And now, the second advice. Beat the banks, open high-interest, low-hassle accounts, and negotiate fees like an Indian.
Whoa. That's pretty direct.
It is, right?
Yeah.
It really got me thinking about all the ways we might be, I don't know, maybe kind of letting banks take advantage without even realizing it.
Yeah. I think a lot of people just don't even question it. Like, oh, that's just how banks are. Yeah.
Exactly. So we'll be exploring alternatives like online banks and credit unions. And most importantly, we want to help you feel empowered to take control of your finances. Because, it can be done. Like, I remember when I first started using a checking account, I had no clue about overdraft fees.
Oh, no. That's a tough lesson to learn.
Seriously, I was just making small purchases, not even thinking about my balance.
Yeah.
Boom. Hit with all these crazy fees. It was not fun.
It's such a common experience, unfortunately. Banks make a ton of money from fees, especially those overdraft fees. It's crazy. We're talking billions of dollars annually.
It's almost like they're, I don't know, hoping we'll slip up. But it's not just the fees. It's also the interest rates, right? The way traditional banks make a profit through arbitrage, it's kind of wild when you think about it.
It's true. They basically take the money you deposit, the money you entrust to them, and lend it out at a much higher interest rate than they give you. It's a smart system if you're the bank, I guess.
Not so much if you're the one depositing the money. So if traditional banks are, I don't know, playing this game, where else can we turn? Well, that's where those online banks come in, right? Honestly, I was skeptical at first.
I think a lot of people are.
But what I've learned is that they have way lower overhead, which lets them offer higher interest rates. I'm talking like 6 to 10 times higher in some cases.
Yeah.
And often lower fees, too.
Right. And I know some people might worry, like, wait, is my money safe in an online bank? But remember, the FDIC insurance is still there, just like with traditional banks. So your money's protected up to a certain amount.
Good point. Security is definitely important. So let's talk about checking versus savings accounts for a minute. I read this analogy in one of our sources that really clicked for me. They described a checking account as like the email inbox for your money.
I like that.
Right. Your paycheck lands there, you pay bills from there, it's all your day-to-day transactions.
Makes sense. Then you've got the savings account, which should be treated, I think, with a bit more intention. Even if you're not saving huge amounts right now, that separate account can be powerful. Think of it as your, goals account.
I love that.
Yeah, for building towards a down payment on a house or a big trip or whatever your goals are.
Speaking of systems, the author of one of our sources actually uses a multi-account system, which I thought was fascinating. They've got a Schwab checking account for everyday expenses, an ING direct savings account for their long-term goals, and then they're slowly phasing out an old Wells Fargo account.
Interesting.
It sounded kind of complicated at first,
Yeah.
but they break it down into 3 setups: basic, optimized, and advanced. So you can choose what level of, I don't know, complexity you're comfortable with.
Yeah, makes it much more accessible. Now, let's not forget about those credit unions. We've got some great info on those, too. That not-for-profit structure can often lead to, better rates and more personalized service than you might get at a big bank.
Right. Definitely something to consider if you're looking for a more community-focused approach.
Now, want to hear about some of the, let's say, shiny marketing tactics that traditional banks use to keep us hooked?
Oh, yeah. Lay 'em on me. I'm ready to see through the smoke and mirrors.
Okay, so first up, you've got the classic teaser rate. You know those, like get 6% interest for the first 6 months.
Uh, yeah. Sounds amazing until it's not.
Exactly. They suck you in and then boom, the rate plummets.
So frustrating. What else should we be wary of?
Minimum balance requirements. Banks love to dangle those free services like checking and bill pay, but then you have to keep a certain balance in your account to qualify. That money could be earning you more interest elsewhere.
It's like a trick. All right, what else? What other sneaky tactics are they up to?
They try to upsell you to those expensive accounts. They might have fancy names and promise perks like priority customer service or bonus interest, but often those accounts come with higher fees that totally wipe out any benefit.
Oh, I hate those. I just want the basic account, please. Okay, give me the last two.
Okay, number 4. Hiding those no-fee options. They might tell you those accounts don't exist anymore, but don't believe them. Always ask. And if they resist, maybe threaten to take your business elsewhere.
Yes. Be your own advocate. Okay, last one. What is it?
The old credit card bundling. They love to push a credit card on you when you open an account. Unless you really want their specific credit card, don't fall for this trap.
Makes sense. All right, so let's move to the third piece of advice from I Will Teach You to Be Rich.
Okay.
Get ready to invest. Open a savings account, even with $50.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this chapter really hit home for me.
Yeah.
I used to think investing was this complicated thing only for like people with tons of money.
Right.
But this book makes it clear that even starting small can make a huge difference.
What's fascinating is that the book emphasizes that saving alone isn't enough.
Hmm.
It even quotes Einstein saying, compounding is mankind's greatest invention because it allows for the reliable, systematic accumulation of wealth.
Wow.
The idea is that we need our money to work for us, and
Ugh.
investing, not just saving, is how we do that.
I love that quote. It really highlights the power of compounding, right?
Exactly.
So even if I'm only investing a small amount, like $50 a month, it can still grow significantly over time.
Exactly. Think of it like a snowball rolling down a hill.
Okay.
It starts small, but as it picks up more snow, it gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
That's what compounding does for your investments. Even small, regular contributions can lead to substantial growth over the long term.
Okay, that analogy makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people, especially younger folks, might still be intimidated by investing.
Hmm.
What are some of the reasons why young people might shy away from investing?
The book addresses this head on, actually.
Okay.
Many young people avoid investing because of fear, lack of knowledge, or the misconception that it's only for the wealthy.
Right.
They might be afraid of losing money, unsure where to start, or think they need a large sum to begin with.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started out, I felt completely lost.
Hmm.
I thought investing was all about picking individual stocks and constantly watching the market.
Yeah.
But this book breaks down the process in a way that's easy to understand and follow.
Absolutely. The book emphasizes that investing doesn't have to be complicated.
Okay.
It's about building a solid foundation and developing consistent habits, even if you're starting small. And speaking of starting small, the book provides a clear roadmap called the Ladder of Personal Finance to guide you on your investing journey.
A ladder, huh? I like that visual.
Yeah.
It makes investing feel more achievable, like climbing one step at a time.
Right.
So talk me through this ladder.
Sure.
What are the key steps involved in climbing to financial success?
The first rung of the ladder is maximizing your 401k contributions, especially if your employer offers a matching program.
Okay.
It's essentially free money that you're missing out on if you don't contribute enough to get the full match.
Right, the free money thing. That's definitely something I wish I had known earlier.
Yeah.
So after maxing out the 401k, what's the next step on this financial ladder?
The next run is tackling any high-interest debt, particularly credit card debt.
Okay.
The book stresses the importance of getting rid of this burden before investing more aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
It even points you back to chapters 1 and 9 for specific debt payoff strategies.
Got it. So get that debt under control before moving on to more investing. Makes sense. So what's the third rung on this ladder to financial freedom?
Step 3 is all about opening a Roth IRA.
A Roth IRA. Now, I'll admit, when I first heard that term, I thought it was some kind of exotic coffee drink.
Uh-huh.
But I'm starting to understand that it's actually a powerful tool for building wealth.
Yeah.
So can you break down what a Roth IRA is and how it differs from a 401k?
Of course. Both 401ks and Roth IRAs are tax-advantaged retirement accounts, but they have some key distinctions.
Okay.
With a 401k, you contribute pre-tax dollars, which lowers your taxable income now, but you'll pay taxes on the money when you withdraw it in retirement.
So it's like delaying the tax hit until later when you're hopefully in a lower tax bracket.
Exactly. Now, with a Roth IRA, you contribute after-tax dollars, meaning you've already paid taxes on that income.
Okay.
But here's the beauty of it. When you retire and start withdrawing funds from your Roth IRA, those withdrawals are tax-free.
Wow. Tax-free withdrawals in retirement. That sounds like a pretty sweet deal,
Yeah.
especially if I end up in a higher tax bracket later on. But are there any downsides to a Roth IRA compared to a traditional 401k?
That's a great question. While the tax-free withdrawals in retirement are a major advantage of a Roth IRA, there are a few things to consider.
Okay.
Since you're contributing after-tax dollars, your contributions won't lower your taxable income in the present like they would with a traditional 401k.
Hmm.
Also, Roth IRAs have annual contribution limits, which are lower than those for 401k.
Okay.
So it's important to weigh these factors when deciding which type of account is right for you.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's really about finding the right balance and choosing the accounts that align with my individual financial goals and situation.
Precisely. And to illustrate the potential of a Roth IRA, the book shares a compelling example.
Okay.
Imagine if Roth IRAs existed back in 1972 and you invested $10,000 in Southwest Airlines stock.
Wow.
Fast forward to today, and that investment would have grown to about $10 million completely tax-free.
$10 million tax-free. That's mind-blowing. Okay. I'm definitely starting to see the appeal of a Roth IRA.
Right.
So how do I actually open one? Is it a complicated process?
Not at all. The book recommends going with a discount brokerage like Vanguard or T. Rowe Price.
Okay.
These companies offer lower fees compared to full-service brokerages, giving you more control over your investments.
Mm-hmm.
You can easily open an account online and start investing in a matter of minutes.
Okay. That sounds pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So we've covered the first 3 rungs of the ladder of personal finance. Max out the 401k, match conquer debt, and open a Roth IRA.
Right.
What are the final 2 rungs?
The fourth rung is going back to your 401k and contributing as much as possible, even beyond your employer match.
Okay.
The book encourages you to take full advantage of the tax benefits and compounding growth within this account.
Got it. So once I've taken care of the basics, I should go back and focus on maximizing my 401k contributions.
Exactly.
What about the final rung?
The fifth and final rung is for those who have additional funds to invest after maxing out their 401k and Roth IRA. It involves opening a regular taxable investment account and exploring other investment options beyond retirement accounts.
All right. And now, the fourth advice of the book, conscious spending, how to save hundreds per month and still buy what you love.
You know, before we even dive into the specifics, what really struck me about this book was its refreshing approach to personal finance.
Yeah.
It's not about deprivation or guilt.
Mm.
It's about empowerment and intentionality.
Right. Like, it's like the author took all those stuffy, complicated budgeting rules and, like, threw them out the window.
Totally.
Remember those soul-crushing spreadsheets
Yeah.
and penny-pinching strategies?
Yeah.
This book is the complete opposite.
Exactly. Instead of getting bogged down in tracking every single expense,
Right.
it challenges us to rethink our entire relationship with money
Yeah.
and shift from a mindset of restriction to one of intention.
I have to admit, when I first started reading, I was a bit skeptical. I thought, okay, how can I possibly save money without feeling like I'm constantly depriving myself?
Yeah.
But then I got to the part where the author completely dismantles the idea of traditional budgets.
He does.
He calls them, and I quote,
Oh, yeah.
the worst word in the history of the world.
He makes a compelling case, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
Instead of those rigid guilt-inducing budgets, he proposes a conscious spending plan.
Okay.
It's about making deliberate choices up front about where your money goes, so you can save, invest, and still enjoy guilt-free spending on the things you love.
It's like deciding in advance, okay, this is how much I'm going to allocate to my fixed costs, this much to my long-term investments, this much to my savings goals,
Right.
and the rest I can spend guilt-free on whatever brings me joy.
Exactly. It's about creating a system that feels empowering rather than restrictive.
Right.
You're not constantly monitoring every penny or feeling guilty about every purchase. You're making conscious choices that align with your values and goals.
You know, there's this great analogy in the book about eating chicken wings that really illustrates this point.
Ah, yes.
I know.
The author's observation about immigrants and their tendency to Meticulously clean every last bit of meat off the bone.
Right. It's not about being cheap. It's about being resourceful and maximizing value.
Right.
And that's the mindset we need to apply to our finances too.
Exactly.
It's about shifting from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of focusing on what we lack, we start appreciating what we have and making the most of it.
I love that.
Okay, but let's be real for a second.
Yeah.
There's this whole keeping up with the Joneses mentality that can make it really hard to spend consciously.
Absolutely. The book talks about how our social circles can subtly influence our spending habits
Oh, yeah.
without us even realizing it.
It's like that Sex and the City effect.
Yes.
Remember how Carrie and her friends were always spending way beyond their means?
Oh, total.
And it kind of made it seem normal,
Yeah.
even glamorous.
It highlights the power of social norms and how we can get caught up in a cycle of comparison and overspending.
The book even cites this crazy study about obesity.
What's that?
Apparently, when a friend becomes obese, your chances of becoming obese increase by 57%.
Wow. That's crazy.
Like spending habits can be contagious too.
It's a fascinating insight into how our social networks can shape our behaviors, both positive and negative.
So how do we break free from those pressures and start making truly conscious spending choices?
Well, the book emphasizes the importance of becoming aware of those subtle influences.
Right.
Are we buying that new gadget because we truly want it or because everyone else has it? Conscious spending requires conscious awareness.
And that brings us to one of the key takeaways from the book.
Yeah.
The difference between being frugal and being cheap.
Yes.
I'll admit, I used to think those were basically the same thing,
Yeah, I think a lot of people do.
but they're actually quite distinct.
Yeah.
The book defines frugality as being strategic and intentional with your spending. It's about choosing what you truly value and are willing to spend money on,
Right.
and then cutting back mercilessly on the things you don't care about.
Yeah, I like that.
So it's not about depriving yourself.
Yeah.
It's about aligning your spending with your values.
Precisely. If you're passionate about travel, for example,
Okay.
you might choose to spend lavishly on incredible vacations,
Huh?
but cut back on things like expensive clothes or fancy dinners.
So it's all about making conscious trade-offs and
Yeah.
prioritizing what truly brings you joy and satisfaction.
Exactly.
And that's where the 4 buckets of conscious spending come in, right?
Exactly. These buckets provide a framework for allocating your money intentionally
Oh,
and ensuring that you're covering all your bases.
okay, so let's break down these buckets.
Okay.
The book divides spending into 4 main categories: fixed costs, investments, savings goals, and guilt-free spending money.
Yeah.
First up, fixed costs.
Okay.
What exactly falls under this category?
Fixed costs typically make up the largest portion of your budget, around 50–60% of your take-home pay.
Wow.
These are your essential expenses, the
Yeah.
things you absolutely need to cover each month.
So we're talking about things like rent or mortgage payments, utilities, transportation costs,
Yes.
and any debt payments you might have.
Exactly. These are the non-negotiables, the foundation of your spending plan.
Okay, so once you've got your fixed costs covered, what's next?
Next up is the investments bucket,
Right?
which is all about setting aside money for long-term growth and financial security.
This is where we put on our investor hats and start thinking about building wealth for the future.
Exactly. The book recommends investing around 10% of your take-home pay, ideally in tax-advantaged accounts like a 401k or a Roth IRA.
And the beauty of these accounts is that they allow your money to grow over time,
Yeah.
benefiting from the power of compound interest.
It's like planting a seed and watching it grow into a mighty oak tree.
I like that analogy.
The earlier you start investing, the more time your money has to compound and generate significant returns.
So we've covered fixed costs and investments.
Correct?
What about those short-term goals we're all working towards?
That's where the savings goals bucket comes in.
Okay.
This is where you set aside money for specific things you want to achieve,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a dream vacation, a down payment on a house, or even just a new gadget.
The book suggests allocating 5–10% of your income for this bucket.
Yeah.
And here's a pro tip from the book that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
Having a clear goal in mind makes saving way more motivating.
It's true. Imagine yourself lounging on a beach in Bali,
Oh, yeah.
finally owning that dream car,
I like it.
or having enough saved for a comfortable retirement.
Right.
Suddenly, putting money aside each month doesn't feel like a chore.
Yeah.
It feels like an investment in your future happiness.
And the book even suggests a clever trick for making those savings goals even more tangible. Naming your savings accounts based on your goals.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
The brilliant psychological tactic. Instead of just a generic savings account, you have your trip to Italy fund, or your new home down payment fund.
I love it.
It makes it so much more real and exciting.
Yeah, it does.
I actually tried this myself, and it's amazing how much more motivated I felt to save once I had those specific goals in mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about being responsible and planning for the future,
Mm-hmm.
but what about enjoying life in the present?
That's where the guilt-free spending money bucket comes in.
Okay.
This is the fun part. This is the money you can spend on whatever your heart desires, eating out, entertainment, hobbies,
Right.
whatever brings you joy.
And the best part, it's guilt-free.
Yeah,
Once you've allocated money to your fixed costs, investments, and savings goals,
right.
you can enjoy this remaining portion,
Mhm.
typically 20–25% of your income, without any guilt or worry.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot between financial responsibility and enjoying the fruits of your labor.
Mhm.
You're not depriving yourself.
Right.
You're making conscious choices that align with your values and priority.
This is where it gets really interesting for me.
Okay.
The book talks about going for big wins.
Yeah.
Those areas where a small change can have a huge impact on your finances.
Oh, yeah.
This is a major aha moment for me.
It's far more effective than obsessing over tiny expenses.
Right.
Instead of skipping your daily latte, focus on negotiating a lower rent, refinancing your student loans, or finding a more affordable cell phone plan.
Right. Those are the game changers.
Yeah.
The moves that can free up hundreds, even thousands of dollars each year. There's this great story in the book about a guy who helped his girlfriend save $1,300 in a year just by eliminating overdraft fees.
It's a perfect example of how tackling those big wins can truly transform your financial situation.
Okay, so we've covered the 4 buckets of conscious spending.
All right.
We've talked about those big wins.
Mm-hmm.
But what about those of us who are struggling to even make ends meet?
Okay.
What if cutting back just isn't enough?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
And the book acknowledges that for some people, increasing their income is just as crucial as managing their expenses.
The book offers some really practical advice on how to boost your earning potential,
Yeah.
like negotiating a raise, finding a higher paying job, or even exploring freelance opportunities.
It's about recognizing that conscious spending isn't just about managing what you have.
Mm-hmm.
It's also about maximizing your earning potential.
And there's this cool trick in the book for quickly calculating your annual salary based on your hourly rate.
Oh, yeah. What is that?
It's a simple but effective way to put those spending decisions into perspective.
Okay.
For example, if you make $25 an hour,
Okay.
you can quickly estimate your annual salary by doubling that number and adding 3 zeros.
Ooh.
So in this case, your annual salary would be approximately $50,000.
Gotcha.
It makes you think twice before making those impulse purchases. Like,
Yeah.
do I really want to spend 8 hours of my life, or in other words, a day's work on that pair of shoes?
Yeah, it really puts things into perspective.
It adds a layer of mindfulness to your spending decisions, encouraging you to weigh the true cost of your purchases. All right, are you ready to unlock like a secret to financial peace of mind? We're diving deep today into this whole idea of save while sleeping, like making your accounts work together automatically.
Yeah.
You know, I used to spend hours each month juggling bills and stressing about overdrafts. It was exhausting. Then I discovered automation.
Right.
And we've got a stack of sources here, articles, guides, even excerpts from this book called I Will Teach You to Be Rich, all about taking the manual labor out of managing your money.
Absolutely.
And lucky for you, we've got an expert here who can help us break down like the why behind all of this automation magic. They're like the financial wizard who can see the big picture.
I appreciate that.
So one source puts it perfectly. Nobody really cares about managing their money. Get away
Okay.
from me, endless mailings from banks, right? Like we're going to make it happen by default.
That's so true. And it's fascinating because what we're doing here is tapping into human psychology. We know people are naturally inclined to inertia, so we design systems that actually capitalize on that, automating good financial habits so they happen effortlessly.
I love that. Okay, this blew my mind in our research. The curve of doing more before doing less. Spend a few hours setting things up now, and it saves you countless hours of stress and tedious work later. Talk about a return on investment.
Exactly. It's like building that financial assembly line.
I love that.
And it's not just about saving time, it's about reducing errors, avoiding late fees, and actually achieving your financial goals, like investing consistently, even if you're not actively thinking about it.
So this is where it gets strategic.
Yeah.
This conscious spending plan idea, we're not
Yeah.
just like randomly automating, we're doing it with purpose. You need a clear plan for how you want your money to flow.
Hmm.
Like what percentage goes to fixed costs, investment, savings, and guilt-free spending.
Right. And that plan becomes the blueprint for your automation. It's about deciding where each next $100 you earn will go and then making sure it happens automatically.
Mhm.
Think of it like setting your financial GPS.
Okay, so let's walk through an example. Let's talk about Michelle, our fictional Michelle. Her paycheck hits her checking account. A portion goes straight to her 401k and Roth IRA. Then money's automatically transferred to her savings account, maybe even with sub-accounts for specific goals, like a wedding or a down payment on a house IRA. Bills are paid automatically. Credit cards are paid off in full each month.
All happening in the background while Michelle sleeps.
I love Michelle.
A key tip here is synchronizing your bill due dates with your pay cycle. Actually contacting those companies, utilities, credit cards, loan providers, and asking to change those billing dates so everything aligns with when you get paid. It simplifies things immensely.
That's such a good idea. Now, what if you've got irregular income? The sources had some great tips for that, too. Building a safety net of 3 months of bare-bones living expenses is crucial. And there are tools like you need a budget that can help you plan based on your previous month's income.
And even with all this automation, regular monitoring is still important. Schedule a monthly check-in to review transactions, track your progress towards goals, and make any necessary adjustments.
Tools like Mint or Quicken can help you visualize your spending and investments.
Absolutely.
So you're investing, saving, paying bills on time, and still have money left over for guilt-free spending. It's like financial freedom on autopilot.
Exactly.
I love it. Okay, so imagine this. You've automated your finances, you're hitting your goals. What do you do with all the extra time and mental energy you've gained? What dreams or passions can you pursue? That's the real power of automating your finances.
I love that.
It frees you up to live a richer, more fulfilling life. We've only scratched the surface here, but this is your launching pad. So, the sixth advice,
Okay.
the myth of financial expertise. Why professional wine tasters and stock pickers are clueless and how you can beat them.
Sounds interesting.
Intriguing.
Yeah.
And we're focusing on Chapter 6 of Ramit Sethi's I Will Teach You to Be Rich for this deep dive.
Yep.
Are you ready to uncover some surprising truths about financial expertise?
Absolutely. It seems you're about to challenge the very foundations of who we trust with our money.
We are.
What's the game plan for this deep dive?
Well, I think we need to start by questioning the idea of financial expertise itself.
Okay.
Is it really all it's cracked up to be?
Yeah.
Can these so-called experts actually predict the market?
Mm-hmm.
Do they consistently outperform amateur investors?
Right.
And are their fees really justified?
Yeah.
We're going to explore all of that and more in this deep dive.
I'm particularly interested in the connection you made with wine tasters.
Okay.
It sounds like there's a fascinating analogy there.
Yeah.
What's the story?
So Sethi starts off with this anecdote about professional wine tasters
Okay.
being put to the test.
Mm-hmm.
They were given glasses of white wine that had been dyed red.
Oh, wow.
And guess what?
What?
They were totally fooled.
Oh, no.
They described these white wines as having notes of cherry and plum,
Wow.
mistaking them for actual reds. Even the most experienced tasters couldn't tell the difference.
That's a powerful image, and it really gets you thinking, doesn't it? We often put experts on a pedestal, assuming they have some sort of superhuman ability to discern quality or predict the future.
Yeah.
But what if it's all just an illusion?
Right.
What if we're being misled by appearances and fancy jargon?
Exactly.
Wow.
And Sethi takes this analogy even further.
Okay.
He argues that just like those wine tasters, many financial experts are also operating under a guise of expertise. They use complex terminology, impressive credentials, and complicated strategies to create an aura of authority.
Right.
But when you strip away all the smoke and mirrors,
Yeah.
their actual performance often falls short of their lofty claims.
And if we look back to those wine tasters,
Yeah.
it makes you wonder how much of what we perceive as expert financial advice is actually just marketing and manipulation.
Right. And here's where it gets even more interesting.
Right.
Sethi points out that the average American's financial literacy is actually quite dismal.
Oh, really?
He cites a 2008 survey by the Jumpstart Coalition, which found that high school seniors only answered 48% of financial literacy questions correctly.
Wow.
And even college seniors only managed 65%.
That's not great.
So if the general public is struggling with basic financial concepts, are the experts really delivering on their promises?
That's a great point. If the baseline understanding is so low,
Yeah.
it would be easy to impress with even slightly more knowledge, creating the illusion of expertise.
Exactly. It really makes you question who you can trust when it comes to financial advice.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest myths Sethi tackles is the idea of timing the market. The elusive ability to buy low and sell high by perfectly predicting market swings.
Right, right.
That's
Yeah.
something that so many financial experts try to sell us on.
Yeah,
But Sethi argues that it's a fool's errand.
that makes sense. Intuitively, we know markets are complex systems influenced by a myriad of factors.
Yeah.
To think anyone could consistently predict them with accuracy seems almost impossible.
Right.
Is that what Sethi found?
He did. He cites a study by Helpburn Capital
Okay.
that looked at the S&P 500 from 1983 to 2003.
Mm-hmm.
They found that if you had missed just the best 20 days of investing during that period,
Okay.
your returns would have been cut in half.
Wow. So even if you get it right most of the time,
Right.
missing out on those key periods of growth could be devastating to your overall returns.
Exactly. And who can consistently predict those 20 best days?
Right.
Certainly not those market timing gurus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sethi actually mentions that according to a 1996 study, a whopping 94.5% of market timing newsletters went out of business.
What?
Their predictions weren't as accurate as they claimed.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah,
Not to mention the stress of constantly trying to time the market, jumping in and out based on predictions can be emotionally exhausting.
absolutely.
And you're constantly paying fees every time you buy or sell.
Right,
It's a recipe for financial anxiety and potentially lower returns.
absolutely. And you're constantly paying fees every time you buy or sell.
Yeah.
A recipe for financial anxiety and potentially lower returns.
Yeah.
So let's move to the seventh advice of the book.
Okay.
Investing isn't only for rich people. Spend the afternoon picking a simple portfolio that will make you rich.
Sounds good.
It's all about empowering yourself to take control of your finances and build wealth without needing to be a Wall Street expert.
Yeah, a lot of people think that investing is this
Yeah.
complicated thing that's only for the wealthy.
Right.
But this chapter really breaks down those barriers and shows you how to get started with a simple and effective investment plan.
Yeah, and I love how the book starts off with a fun personality quiz to
Yeah.
help you figure out your investor profile.
Oh, yeah. The quiz is great. It's a good way to kind of get a sense of
Right.
your risk tolerance and your investment style.
Like, are you a risk taker or a cautious planner or somewhere in between?
Exactly. There are three main profiles that the book identifies. The type of power investor, who's really driven and wants to be very hands-on with their investments. Then there's the just get started investor who just wants a simple and easy approach.
Had it.
And finally, the head in the sand investor who might be avoiding investing altogether.
Oh, yeah. I definitely fell into that head in the sand category. In my early 20s, I was so scared of losing money that I just kept it all in a savings account.
Yeah, I think that's a common fear.
Right.
But what the book highlights is that
Yeah.
not investing can actually be riskier than investing, especially in the long run because of inflation.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Your money is slowly losing value while it just sits in a savings account.
Exactly. And the book really drives that home by comparing the average returns of the S&P 500 to a regular savings account, and the difference is huge.
Yeah, it's pretty eye-opening.
Yeah.
So how do we approach investing without getting overwhelmed?
Well, the chapter champions this idea of automatic investing,
Okay.
which I think is brilliant, especially for busy people who don't want to spend all their time
Yeah.
glued to their phones watching the stock market.
It's like setting your finances on autopilot.
Exactly. You set up regular contributions to low-cost funds and let the magic of compounding work its wonders.
But what about market dips? Don't they make automatic investing risky?
Well, think of a market dip as a sale.
Oh,
You're getting those shares at a discount.
right.
It's an opportunity to buy more.
Okay, that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
Now, I know some of our listeners are probably thinking, what about my friend who keeps telling me investing is too risky?
Yeah, that's a common concern, but the book addresses it head-on by explaining the importance of diversification.
Okay, so not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. You want to spread your investments across different asset classes like stocks, bonds, and cash.
Right.
So that if one area of the market is down, others might be up.
And that helps to kind of smooth out the ride.
Exactly. It helps to mitigate risk and reduce the impact of any single investment's performance on your overall portfolio.
The book also points out that diversification is not the same as asset allocation.
Right. They're related but different.
Okay, so what's the difference?
Diversification is about spreading your investments within a particular asset class, like stocks. For example, you might own shares in companies from different industries or of different sizes.
Right?
Asset allocation, on the other hand, is about how you divide your money across the broader asset classes, stocks, bonds, and cash.
So asset allocation is like the big picture strategy,
Yeah, exactly.
and diversification is how you execute it within each category.
That's a great way to put it. And it turns out that asset allocation plays a huge role in determining your overall investment returns.
Oh, I like.
Yeah, the book cites a landmark study that found that asset allocation is responsible for over 90% of your returns.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So we've got diversification, asset allocation, but how do we even know what to invest in?
Well, the book uses this really helpful visual called the pyramid of investing options
Okay.
to illustrate the different building blocks of investing. At the base of the pyramid, you have the foundational elements, stocks, bonds, and cash.
Can you break those down for us? Like, what are the
Yeah.
pros and cons of each?
Sure. Let's start with stocks. Stocks represent ownership in a company, and they have the potential for high returns, but they also come with more risk.
Right, because the value of a stock can go up or down.
Exactly. And that's why the book discourages trying to time the market or pick individual stocks. It's just too unpredictable.
So stocks are kind of the high risk, high reward option.
Yeah, you could say that. Then you have bonds. Bonds are like loans to a government or a corporation. They tend to be less volatile than stocks,
Okay,
and they offer more predictable returns, but generally lower returns.
got it. And then there's cash, which is the safest asset class.
Right. Cash is great for short-term needs and emergencies,
Yeah.
but it doesn't offer much in terms of growth potential.
And it can actually lose value over time due to inflation.
Exactly. So it's not ideal for long-term investments.
Okay, so we've got the basics of stocks, bonds, and cash. Now the book dives into mutual funds and index funds.
Right. Those are two popular ways to invest in a diversified portfolio of stocks or bonds.
I've heard those terms before, but I'm not really sure what the difference is.
Sure. So mutual funds were once considered revolutionary because they allowed investors to pool their money together and invest in a diversified portfolio
Okay.
that was managed by a professional fund manager.
Right.
But the downside of mutual funds is that they often come with high fees called expense ratios.
And those C's can eat into your returns.
Absolutely. That's where index funds come in. Index funds are like the more efficient, younger sibling of mutual funds.
Okay.
They use computers to track a specific market index, like the S&P 500,
Got it.
which means they're passively managed and have much lower fees.
So you're basically getting market level returns without having to pay those high fees.
That's the beauty of index funds. Even Warren Buffett, one of the most successful investors of all time, is a big fan of index funds.
Well, if Warren Buffett recommends them, they must be good. Now, the book also seems really excited about life cycle funds.
Oh yeah, life cycle funds are great. They're like the ultimate set it and forget it option for investing.
Okay, so how do they work?
Basically, they automatically diversify your investments across different asset classes based on your age.
Okay,
And then they gradually become more conservative as you approach retirement.
that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It takes all the guesswork out of asset allocation and rebalancing.
Exactly. You literally just pick a fund based on your target retirement date and you're good to go.
So it sounds like the book is recommending either life cycle funds or building your own index fund portfolio.
Yeah, those are the two main paths that the chapter outlines.
Okay, cool. So let's dive into each of those options in more detail,
All right.
starting with how to make the most of your 401k if you have one.
Okay. All right, so let's talk 401k.
Yeah, a lot of people have them through their employers.
Right. And one of the best things about a 401k is that a lot of employers offer a matching contribution.
Oh yeah, it's like free money.
Exactly. You're essentially getting an instant return on your investment.
So if your employer offers a match, definitely contribute enough to get the full match.
Absolutely. It's one of the easiest ways to boost your retirement savings.
Now, when it comes to choosing investments within your 401k, the book recommends picking the most aggressive option you're comfortable with, especially when you're younger.
Yeah, time is on your side when you're young.
Right.
You have more time to recover from potential losses.
So you can afford to take on a little more risk.
Exactly. And that's where the power of compounding really comes into play.
Compounding is like a snowball rolling downhill, getting bigger and bigger over time.
Exactly. The earlier you start investing and the longer your money has to grow, the more you benefit from that snowball effect.
So even if you can only invest a small amount right now, it can really add up over time.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about 401ks. What about other investment accounts like a Roth IRA?
Yeah, Roth IRAs are great. They offer some really nice tax advantages.
Right. And one of the cool things about a Roth IRA is that you have a lot more flexibility in choosing your investments.
So if you're into life cycle funds, you can pick one that aligns with your retirement goals.
Exactly. And the book even gives some specific examples from companies like Vanguard and T. Rowe Price.
Oh, cool. Now, remember the book also mentioning this fun little trick called the Rule of 72.
Oh, yeah. The Rule of 72 is a quick and easy way to calculate how long it will take to double your money based on a given interest rate.
So if you invest in a fund with an average annual return of 7%, you would divide 72 by 7, which equals roughly 10.
Exactly.
So it would take about 10 years for your money to double.
Right. It's a simple calculation, but it really highlights the power of compounding over time.
It's pretty amazing how quickly your money can grow if you just let it sit and do its thing.
Yeah, the key is to be patient and consistent with your investments.
Yeah, I know some of our listeners might be thinking, okay, all this talk about life cycle funds is great, but what if I want more control over my investments?
Yeah, some people prefer a more hands-on approach, and that's totally fine.
So what about building your own index fund portfolio?
That's definitely an option. The book goes into detail about how to do that.
But it sounds kind of intimidating. Where do you even begin?
Well, the first step is to figure out your asset allocation goals.
Right. So how much of your money you want to put into stocks, bonds, and cash?
Exactly. And remember, those allocations will probably change as you get older and closer to retirement.
So when you're younger, you can take on more risk.
Right. You have more time to recover from any losses.
But as you get closer to retirement, you want to shift towards a more conservative approach.
To protect your nest egg.
Exactly. Now, the book mentions David Swensen, who's this legendary investor who managed Yale's endowment.
Oh, yeah. Swensen is a genius when it comes to asset allocation.
So the book recommends using his model as a starting point for building your own portfolio.
Right. His model is a great example of a well-diversified and balanced portfolio.
Okay, so once you've got your asset allocation figured out, how do you actually choose specific index funds?
Well, there are a lot of online resources that can help you with that.
Like what?
The book mentions etrade.com as a good place to start.
Okay.
You can research and compare different funds based on their fees, their performance, and their holdings.
And the book emphasizes the importance of minimizing fees. And now it's time for easy maintenance. We're talking about optimizing your financial infrastructure for long-term success. Think of it like fine-tuning a high-performance engine to keep it running smoothly for years to come.
That's a great analogy. We're going to dive deep into maximizing your existing investments and making sure they continue to grow.
Exactly. We'll explore strategies like boosting your investment contributions, this cool one-pot solution for managing multiple accounts, and even figuring out when it's smart to sell. So let's get started with the fuel that powers this financial engine, our contributions. We've talked about automating savings, but how can we really maximize that fuel flow?
Well, it's not just about hitting those basic savings percentages anymore. We need to think bigger and get creative. Remember that magical thing called compound interest? The more we invest early on, the more powerful that magic becomes.
Oh, absolutely. I was messing around with that compound interest calculator on dinkytown.net the other day, and it blew my mind. Just imagine investing $100 a month starting at 25. By the time you're 65, you'd have over $150,000, assuming a 7% return.
That's right.
But bump those contributions up to just $200 a month, and boom, you're looking at over $300,000. That's the power of compounding at work.
It really is. It's like a snowball rolling downhill, getting bigger and bigger as it goes. And to really supercharge that snowball, we need to find some extra fuel beyond our regular income.
So where can we find this extra fuel?
Think about negotiating better deals on big purchases. Could you knock a few thousand off the price of a new car? Or maybe find a lower interest rate on your mortgage. That frees up cash instantly for investments. Even cutting back on unnecessary subscriptions or finding cheaper alternatives can save you a surprising amount over time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's all about being mindful of our spending and redirecting those savings towards our investments.
Precisely. It's not about depriving yourself. It's about making conscious choices that align with your long-term financial goals.
Okay, so we're fueling up our financial rocket ship and aiming for the stars. But we all know there's going to be some turbulence along the way, right? I'm talking about market fluctuations, those hot stock tips from friends, and all the other noise that can throw us off course. How do we stay on track with all that going on?
That's where discipline and a long-term perspective come in. Remember, we're not playing the short-term game here. Trying to time the market or chase the latest investment fad is risky. It's more likely to leave you with losses than
Oh,
riches.
I've totally been there. Just last week, a friend was trying to convince me to invest in some cryptocurrency that was supposedly going to be the next Bitcoin. Sure, Bitcoin made some people millionaires, but it's incredibly volatile. I'd much rather stick to my diversified portfolio and ignore the hype.
Smart move. And remember, past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Just because something did well before doesn't mean it will continue to do so.
So we're ignoring those get-rich-quick schemes and focusing on slow and steady growth, like a well-oiled machine humming along.
Exactly. Trust the process and stick to your plan even when things get a little bumpy.
All right, so we're fueling the machine, ignoring the noise, and playing the long game.
Hmm.
What's the next step in optimizing our financial infrastructure?
Now it's time to talk about rebalancing. It's one of those crucial maintenance tasks that can make a huge difference. Think of your investment portfolio like a garden. You've carefully planted a mix of stocks, bonds, and maybe even some real estate to create a balanced ecosystem.
Okay, I like where this is going.
But as time goes on, some of those plants might start growing faster than others. Maybe your stocks have shot up and now they make up way more of your portfolio than you originally planned. Or maybe your bonds have lagged behind, throwing off your carefully crafted asset allocation. That's when rebalancing comes in.
So are we talking about actually trimming those overgrown stocks, so to speak?
There are a couple of ways to approach rebalancing. One is to redirect new contributions. Instead of adding more fuel to the already overperforming asset class, you can pause investments there and direct those funds to the underperforming areas until things are back in balance.
Ah, so it's like adding more fertilizer to the plants that need a boost, rather than chopping down the ones that are thriving.
Precisely. Now, another approach is to sell some of those overperforming assets and use the proceeds to buy more of the underperforming ones.
Okay, so we have two options: redirect new contributions or sell and rebalance. Is one approach usually better than the other?
Ideally, you'll want to redirect new contributions first. Selling assets can trigger capital gains taxes, which can really eat into your returns, especially in your 20s and 30s when you're aiming for long-term growth.
That makes sense. So we prioritize redirecting contributions and only consider selling if we absolutely have to.
Exactly. And speaking of minimizing taxes, there's another important thing to consider when rebalancing tax-advantaged accounts.
You mean those 401ks and Roth IRAs we talked about before?
Yeah. Yes. Utilizing those accounts is your 85% solution for tax management. When you're rebalancing, it's generally more tax efficient to rebalance within those tax advantage accounts first before making any adjustments in your taxable accounts.
Okay, so we're feeding the machine, ignoring the noise, rebalancing like pros, and all while keeping those pesky taxes in check. It sounds like we're building a pretty sophisticated financial system here.
We are. And to really streamline things, especially if you have multiple investment accounts, I want to introduce you to this really neat strategy called the one-pot solution. It simplifies managing multiple investment accounts. Think of it like viewing all your accounts as one big pot of money.
So instead of worrying about each individual account, we're looking at the big picture, our overall asset allocation.
Exactly. It makes rebalancing so much simpler. You designate one account as your variable account for adjustments, while the others stay static with specific asset classes.
That sounds pretty cool. Could you give me an example of how that works?
Sure. Let's say your ideal asset allocation is 70% stocks and 30% bonds. You could make your Roth IRA your variable account, holding a mix of stock and bond funds that you adjust to keep your overall portfolio at that 70-30 target.
Okay, I'm following this so far.
So maybe your 401k is fully invested in stocks. That would be a static account. And let's say your taxable account holds only bonds, another static account.
So when it's time to rebalance, we only tinker with that Roth IRA to maintain that overall 70-30 balance.
Exactly. When you're rebalancing, you see how far your overall portfolio has drifted from your 70-30 target, and then you make adjustments within your Roth IRA. You might sell some stocks to buy more bonds or vice versa.
Wow, that's way easier than trying to rebalance across all those different accounts.
It is, and don't forget, it's a good idea to hold those tax-inefficient investments like bonds in your tax-advantaged accounts.
Great tip.
Yeah.
So we've got our system humming along, making regular contributions, rebalancing like pros, and using this one-pot method. But are there ever times when it makes sense to hit that sell button?
There are definitely a few scenarios where selling investments is the right move, even in your 20s and 30s. The most obvious one is emergencies.
Okay, so let's say I get hit with a financial curveball. What's the best way to access funds without messing up my long-term plan?
This is where having a solid financial foundation really pays off. You want to have a clear plan for accessing funds in a pinch. The first step is always to tap into your emergency savings. That's what it's there for.
That makes sense. But what if my emergency fund isn't enough?
Then you might consider selling some valuables that you don't absolutely need. It can be tough to part with things, but it's better than jeopardizing your long-term financial health.
Okay, so we've gone through savings and maybe sold some things. What's next?
Well, you could try borrowing from family, but that depends on your relationship with them and their financial situation. It's not an option for everyone, but it's worth considering.
Yeah, that's true.
Hmm.
So we've exhausted savings, sold some things, maybe asked family. What if we still need more? Is it time to dip into those retirement accounts?
Only as a last resort. Remember, retirement accounts are meant for long-term growth. Tapping them early should be avoided unless it's absolutely necessary.
Got it. Don't touch the retirement piggy bank unless it's an emergency. What about using credit cards in an emergency?
That's the absolute last resort. High interest rates can make a bad situation even worse. Avoid racking up credit card debt, if at all possible.
Okay, so emergencies aside, is there another reason to sell investments?
Yes, if an investment consistently underperforms, it might be time to cut your losses. But you need to look at it in context.
So we're not panicking if one investment is down a little bit, right?
Right. Remember, we're in it for the long haul.
Wow.
Compare your investment's performance to its industry benchmark. If the whole industry is down, it could just be a temporary downturn, and holding onto that investment might still be the best strategy.
Makes sense. So what should we look for?
See if the underperformance is because of something specific to the company, not just a general industry trend. Maybe they made some bad management decisions or their product is becoming obsolete. If that's the case, it might be a sign to sell.
Like if we invested in pagers back in the day and now they're tanking, maybe it's time to move on to something a little more up to date.
Exactly.
Okay, so emergencies and consistently underperforming investments are two valid reasons to sell. Any other scenarios?
Well, the last one is actually a happy one when you achieve a specific goal. Let's say you've been investing for something special like a dream trip or a down payment on a house, and you've hit your target. You can celebrate by selling those investments and enjoying the fruits of your labor.
I love that. Emergencies, bad investments, and achieving goals. Those are our green lights for selling. Now, I know we've been focusing on the nitty-gritty of optimizing finances, but can we take a step back for a moment? What's the bigger picture here? Why is financial mastery so important?
That's a great question. When you zoom out, you realize that financial well-being isn't just about accumulating wealth. It's about having the freedom and security to pursue your passions, care for your loved ones, and even make a positive impact on the world.
Now you're speaking my language.
Think about it. When your finances are running smoothly in the background, you have more time and energy to focus on the things that truly matter.
No more stressing about bills or worrying about retirement.
Exactly. Instead, you can channel that energy into hobbies, spending quality time with loved ones, or maybe even starting that side hustle you've always dreamed of.
Okay, so freedom and flexibility are key. What else?
As you become more financially secure, you can start thinking about giving back to your community. Maybe you've always wanted to support a cause you care about, volunteer your time, or even start a scholarship fund like our author did.
Ooh, a scholarship fund. That's a fantastic idea.
There are so many ways to make a difference, even if you're not a millionaire.
And now, the final advice. A rich life. The finances of relationships, weddings, buying a car, and your first house.
Ooh, sounds juicy.
It is. We're diving deep, into smart money moves for those big, sometimes kind of scary life decisions.
Yeah.
So get ready for some counterintuitive tips, maybe a few laps along the way. Who knows?
I'm in.
But before we get to those, those big life events like weddings and houses,
Yeah.
a lot of us are starting out with, shall we say, a little bit of baggage.
Oh, you mean student loans? Credit card debt.
Bingo. Gerson Argent points out that the average American college grad is carrying around like $20,000 in student loans.
Oof, that's a hefty chunk of change.
It is, and that's not even counting the roughly $2,500 in credit card debt they've got on top of that.
Yeah.
Did you face a similar situation when you were starting out?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's something a lot of people can relate to, honestly. And, it leads to that classic dilemma, like pay down that debt ASAP or chase those like juicy investment returns.
Right.
It's like
Everyone's chanting compound interest, but it's hard to hear them over the sound of those student loan bills.
It really is. And Sethi dives right into this. He says it's not as simple as just comparing interest rates.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. What's the catch?
Well, while those interest rates are important,
Yeah.
he also emphasizes the importance of thinking about your personal risk tolerance and how comfortable you are carrying debt.
Oh, that makes sense.
Like some folks are totally fine carrying a bit of debt, if it
Yeah.
means they can potentially maximize their investment growth, while others, they just need to wipe that slate clean, for their peace of mind. It's almost an emotional thing as much as it is financial.
It's true. Debt can weigh on you, even if the numbers make sense on paper. So what does Sethi recommend?
Well, he actually suggests a hybrid approach. So, splitting your money between debt repayment and investing.
Oh, okay, so not all or nothing.
Exactly. It's all about finding that sweet spot, where you're making progress on both fronts without feeling overwhelmed.
I like that. It acknowledges that personal finance is, well, personal.
Yeah.
Speaking of personal, let's talk family, specifically parents.
Ooh, always a fun one.
Right. Sethi has some pretty strong opinions, let's say, about letting your parents manage your finances as an adult.
Oh, yeah. He's not shy about that at all.
Remember that analogy he uses, the whole onion beating thing?
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Pretty vivid image.
It's hilarious, but he argues that relying on your parents for financial management can actually hinder your financial independence.
Makes sense. You're not really learning to do it yourself.
Exactly. And it kind of robs you of those crucial learning experiences?
Yeah, like making mistakes, figuring it out as you go.
Right. Because even if they make great decisions for you, are you truly in control? Are you holding that metaphorical onion?
Good point. And he also makes a good point about investment styles too.
Oh, yeah. Explain that one.
Like your parents might be way more risk averse, which could totally limit your potential gains if they're the ones calling the shots.
Right, because they might not be comfortable with, say, investing in the stock market.
Exactly. So even with the best intentions, their approach might not match up with your financial goals.
That's a good point. But what if, and this is a sensitive topic, what if the tables are turned? What if you're the one worried about your parents' financial situation?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Because you want to help, but you also don't want to overstep, right?
Exactly. And Sethi offers some really good advice for this situation. He suggests focusing on, like, guiding their choices.
Oh, so instead of taking over completely.
Right, like, offer support, resources, help them find a good financial advisor if they need one.
So respecting their autonomy while offering a helping hand, it's kind of like how we should be approaching those student loans, right?
Totally. It's all about finding that balance.
And speaking of finding balance, let's talk about finances in our romantic relationships.
Oh, Allah.
It's like the ultimate relationship test, isn't it? It's like DTR, but for your bank accounts.
Defining the relationship, but for finances. I love it.
Right. And it can be so awkward and uncomfortable.
Definitely. But Sethi is adamant that these conversations, they should be about strengthening the relationship, not starting a fight.
Okay, but how do you even start that conversation without it turning into, World War III?
Right, right. He suggests easing into it. Like, instead of immediately diving into your own finances, start by asking for your partner's financial opinions.
So, like, what do you think about saving versus investing or something like that?
Exactly. Or you could even ask, what did your family teach you about money?
Ooh, that's a good one. It gets those underlying beliefs out in the open.
Right, because it's not just about the numbers, it's about understanding where those financial habits and beliefs come from.
So true.
Yeah.
But eventually you have to get into the nitty-gritty, right?
Oh, yeah. And for that, Sethi has this thing he calls the big meeting.
The big meeting. Sounds intimidating.
The name might be a little intense,
Yeah.
but it's really just about transparency, laying it all out there.
Okay, so accounts, debts, income, spending habits, goals, the whole nine yards.
Yep. Full financial disclosure.
And what's the point of all that?
Yeah.
Like, what are you trying to achieve with the big meeting?
Well, it's about getting on the same page,
Gotcha.
making sure you're both aligned when it comes to your financial values and goals.
And hopefully avoiding those big blow-up arguments down the road.
Exactly. It's all about proactive communication.
All right, let's get into some real-world scenarios. What about splitting expenses when there's, like, a significant income disparity between partners?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Because 50-50 doesn't always feel fair.
Right. And both Sethi and Juror's son, Argent, adjust this. Suze Orman, the financial guru.
Yeah, no, Suze.
She suggests proportional sharing. So instead of splitting everything straight down the middle, you divide expenses based on each person's income.
Oh, that makes a lot more sense. It's more about contributing equally, even if the dollar amounts are different.
Exactly.
So what about those classic arguments, about one partner being the spender and the other being the saver? Like, why'd you buy those shoes? Or why can't you just stick to the budget?
Ah, yes. The age-old battle. Seth's tactic here is to shift the focus to shared savings goals.
Okay, I like that. So instead of arguing about individual spending habits,
Right. You're both working together towards a common objective.
like, hey, it's not about you buying those shoes, it's about us reaching our goal of buying a house together.
Exactly. It's about aligning your financial values with your shared dreams. And speaking of dreams, let's talk weddings.
Ooh, this is a big one.
It is, and it's where we often see the biggest clash between like fairy tale expectations and financial reality.
Oh, for sure. Sethi tells this hilarious story about a friend who claimed to have an unlimited budget for her wedding.
Oh no, that's a recipe for disaster?
It is. And then, he drops this bombshell.
Yeah.
The average American wedding costs a whopping $28,000.
Whoa, that's more than half the median household income. That's wild.
It is, and it just goes to show that even those of us who swear we'll have a simple wedding,
Right.
we can easily get caught up in that, whirlwind of tulle and floral arrangement.
Totally. We all want that picture perfect day, but it comes at a price. Literally.
So what's the solution? How do you plan a wedding without going broke?
Well, Sethi actually created this wedding cost simulation.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, to help couples break down those expenses and figure out where they can save. And surprisingly, guest count isn't always the biggest factor.
Really? What is them?
It's often those fixed costs like the venue, the photography, the catering. Those can really drain your budget.
So even before you say yes to the dress, you need to be saying yes to a realistic budget.
Exactly. And even if you're not engaged yet, it's never too early to start planning and saving. Sethi even calculated how much you'd need to save each month to avoid starting your marriage in debt. It's a sobering reality check for sure.
Okay, so planning ahead is key. And that brings us to another area where planning and strategy can really pay off: negotiating your salary.
Yes, this is huge.
Because it's the fastest way to earn more money. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's not about being greedy or demanding. It's about knowing your worth and advocating for yourself.
And that first salary negotiation, it can really set the stage for your future earnings, right?
Totally. It can impact future raises and even your earning potential at future jobs.
Why, that's a lot of pressure. So how do we do it? What's the secret?
Well, Sethi breaks it down into 7 key tactics, but it all boils down to being prepared, confident, and knowing your value. He gives this great example of his friend Rachel. She actually landed a 28% raise.
28%. Tell me everything. What did she do?
She did her research, she came to the negotiation table with concrete ideas, and she went above and beyond to demonstrate her value. She basically blew them away with her preparedness.
So it's not just about showing up and asking for more money.
No, not at all.
It's about proving that you deserve it.
Exactly. And remember, confidence, not cockiness. You're aiming for a mutually beneficial agreement, not trying to, strong-arm your way to a higher salary.
Right. It's a collaboration, not a competition.
Exactly.
All right, let's move on to another major purchase where I think a lot of people make costly mistakes.
Cars.
Oh, yeah, this is a good one because everyone has opinions about cars.
They do. And Sethi has this really interesting take on it. He says that the length of time you keep a car, it's actually more important than getting a good deal up front.
Really? That's counterintuitive.
I know, right? Because we're also focused on getting the lowest price.
Yeah.
But we don't always think about the long game.
Interesting. So what does he recommend then? He actually encourages aiming to drive a car for 10 years or more.
Wow.
Think about how much you could save if you weren't constantly upgrading every few years.
That's true. But I feel like some people would be like, 10 years? No way. I need the latest and greatest.
Oh, I know. But Sethi has some pretty strong words for those who choose, quote, crappy cars. He straight up calls them morons.
Whoa, no holding back there.
But in all seriousness, what he's advocating for is choosing cars that are reliable, enjoyable to drive, and have good resale value. It's about conscious spending, making choices that align with your priorities and budget.
Makes sense. So it's not just about the cheapest option. It's about finding that sweet spot of quality and affordability.
Exactly. And what about all those, hidden costs that come with car ownership? The things we don't always think about when we're staring at that shiny new car in the showroom.
Right. Like insurance, gas, maintenance, all that stuff.
Exactly. That's where the concept of total cost of ownership comes in. It's not just about that sticker price. It's about factoring in all those other expenses that can really add up.
So you're saying it's important to look beyond that monthly payment.
Absolutely. And speaking of getting a good deal, Sethi shares his own car negotiation victory. He used this information service called Fighting Chance. And he even launched, get this, a strategic fax campaign to outsmart the dealers.
A fax campaign. That's old school. Did it actually work?
It did. It's
Yeah.
a classic example of how knowledge is power. By being informed and savvy, you can save thousands of dollars.
That's pretty inspiring. So it sounds like information and preparation are key, whether you're negotiating a salary or buying a car.
Absolutely. And those same principles apply to probably the biggest purchase most of us will ever make, a
Yeah.
house.
Ah, the American dream.
Right. But Sethi reminds us that it's important to approach this with a clear head, not just a heart full of emotion.
Easy to get swept up in the excitement, for sure. Especially when you walk into that perfect house.
It is. And Sethi, he's actually pretty adamant that houses are primarily for living in, not for making huge investment gains.
Mhm.
Kind of debunks that myth about real estate always being a surefire investment.
Oh, interesting. So it's more about finding a place to call home.
Exactly. And he lays out some traditional affordability guidelines, like a house should cost no more than 2.5 times your annual income. You should aim for at least a 20% down payment.
Those are pretty standard guidelines.
They are, but he also acknowledges that those might need some adjusting depending on your location and individual circumstances.
Makes sense. Not everyone fits neatly into those boxes.
Right. But the underlying principle is crucial. Buy what you can truly afford, even if it means scaling back your expectations.
So being realistic about your budget is key.
Absolutely. And what about the age-old question? Rent versus buy?
Ah, the ultimate debate.
It is. What does Sethi say?
Well, he doesn't really offer a definitive answer because, again, it depends. But he suggests that if you plan to stay in the same place for 10 years or more, buying might make more financial sense.
Okay, so long-term commitment favors buying.
Right. But he also emphasizes that regardless of whether you rent or buy, being informed and doing your research is absolutely essential.
So knowledge is power,
Yeah.
yet again. Don't just jump into a decision blindly.
Exactly. Especially when it comes to something as big as buying a house. It really is a minefield out there when it comes to real estate host speaker. It can be. But speaking of being informed, both Sethi and Gurson Argent really hammer home the importance of having like a financial safety net.
Oh, you
And
you mean an emergency fund?
exactly. Like what happens if instead of planning a wedding, you suddenly get hit with an unexpected medical bill or God forbid you lose your job?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Having an emergency fund can be a lifesaver in those situations.
It can. And they suggest having, ideally, 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses stashed away in an easily accessible account.
Yeah, that's the gold standard.
It is. But that sounds like a lot of money, especially when you're already, juggling those student loans and maybe trying to save for a house. It can seem daunting, for sure. But even setting aside a small amount each month can make a huge difference over time.
So it's about consistency, like with everything else in personal finance.
Totally. Think of it as an investment in your peace of mind. Knowing you have that buffer can make facing those unexpected challenges a little less stressful.
It's like an insurance policy against life's little surprises,
Yeah,
or big ones for that matter.
exactly. And speaking of insurance, that's another area where it pays to be informed and proactive.
Okay, insurance. Not exactly the most thrilling topic, but important nonetheless.
It is. Sethi actually encourages us to, review our insurance policies regularly and make sure we have adequate coverage. He even suggests shopping around for better rates, which could save you a ton of money.
You're right, it's one of those things we tend to set and forget, but it's worth revisiting every now and then to make sure we're adequately protected.
Absolutely. Because life changes, our needs change, and our insurance should reflect that. So true. Okay, so we've got our emergency fund, our insurance is sorted, but what about those moments when, our emotions get the better of us? Those times when we make impulse purchases and then we're like, ugh, why did I buy that?
Oh, emotional spending, it's a beast.
It is, and we've all been there, right?
Oh, absolutely. Those limited time offers get me every time.
Me too. But Sethi has some great strategies for dealing with this. He suggests implementing a waiting period before making big purchases.
Oh, that's a good one. Just sleep on it.
Exactly. Give yourself time to cool off and really think about if you need it. He also talks about creating a conscious spending plan.
What's that?
Basically, it's allocating funds for things you truly enjoy so you don't feel deprived, but you're still spending within your means.
Oh, I like that. So you're not completely cutting out fun. You're just being more intentional about it.
Exactly. And he even suggests visualizing your long-term goals. Picture yourself achieving that dream vacation or early retirement.
Oh, that's smart. It puts things in perspective. Right. It reminds you why you're saving in the first place. So it's like giving yourself a little financial pep talk before you hit that add to cart button.
I love that. A financial pep talk.
All right, let's shift gears a bit. We've talked a lot about managing your own money, dealing with finances and relationships, planning for those big life events. But what about investing? That can feel like a whole other world, right?
Oh, for sure. And I think that's why a lot of people just avoid it altogether. They're like, oh, it's too complicated. It's too risky. I don't know what I'm
I
doing.
get that, but Sethi, he actually breaks it down in a really clear and accessible way. Like he takes the mystery out of it and makes it seem totally doable.
Well, that's encouraging.
It is. But I know some people are still hesitant. What would you say to someone who's on the fence about investing?
I'd say the most important thing is to start small. You don't need to be a financial whiz or have a ton of money to get started.
So don't let that intimidation factor hold you back.
Exactly. And Sethi recommends starting with index funds. They're basically like baskets of stocks that track a particular market index.
So you're diversifying your investments without having to pick individual stocks.
Right. And they tend to have lower fees than actively managed funds, which can really eat into your returns.
Good to know. And I remember Sethi talking about the importance of having a long-term perspective when it comes to investing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He emphasizes that the market will go up, it will go down, it's a roller coaster.
It is.
But over the long haul, it has historically trended upward. So writing out those fluctuations, staying the course, that's key.
It's like that saying, time in the market beats timing the market.
Exactly. Trying to predict market highs and lows, that's just a recipe for stress and potential losses.
So it's not about getting rich quick.
No, not at all.
It's about building wealth steadily over time.
Right. And that's what Sethi's rich life philosophy is all about. It's not about keeping up with the Joneses or chasing trends. It's about defining your own version of success and using your money to achieve your goals.
I love that. It's about living a life that's both fulfilling and financially secure.
It really is. Like, it's not about how much money you make. It's about what you do with it.
So true. And it's about shifting your mindset, right?
Totally. It's about moving from scarcity to abundance, believing that you can achieve those goals and, create a life of prosperity.
Prosperity and purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that leads us to one of the most important questions we can ask ourselves.
Okay, hit me with it.
What does a rich life actually mean to you?
Ooh, that is a good question. And I think it's different for everyone, right?
Absolutely. For some, it might be about financial freedom, early retirement. Others might be all about travel, pursuing those passions.
Yeah, yeah.
Or just having that security to enjoy life's simple pleasures without constantly stressing about money.
Right, without those financial worries hanging over you.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this and, you're feeling inspired to take control of your finances, start building that rich life.
Yeah.
Where do you suggest people begin?
Well, Sethi offers a ton of practical advice in his book,
Yeah.
But I think one of the most important first steps is just creating a budget. And it doesn't have to be complicated, super restrictive.
Yeah, you don't have to punish yourself.
Exactly. It's just about getting a clear picture of where your money's going and then making conscious choices.
Right, so you can decide, okay, do I really need that?
hmm
Or do I want to put this money towards something else?
Right. And he also talks about automating your finances as much as possible.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
Setting up those automatic transfers to your savings and investment accounts.
It's like paying yourself first.
Exactly. Takes the guesswork out of it.
You're building that financial foundation without having to even think about it too much.
It just happens. And don't forget the power of negotiation. We talked about it with salaries.
Yeah.
But those skills can be applied in so many areas of life.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like getting a better deal on your car insurance.
Yes.
Haggling at the flea market.
Totally. It's a life skill.
It is. It's about knowing your worth and not
Yeah.
being afraid to, ask for what you want.
Exactly. Worst they can say is no.
So true. Well, I think we've covered a ton of ground today in this deep dive into a rich life. From managing debt and budgeting to investing and negotiating, it's all about creating a life that's both, financially secure and fulfilling,
And hopefully inspiring some folks along the way.
inspiring and empowering. Because it's not about becoming a millionaire overnight. It's about those small, consistent choices that add up over time.
Small steps, big results.
Exactly. So if you enjoyed this deep dive into a rich life, make sure you subscribe, like, share it with your friends. And of course, we love hearing from you. So leave a comment. Let us know what resonated with you. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving for that rich life.